Good morning, everyone. I bet you all are wondering why we're here today. Aren't you wondering? This is probably the worst kept secret in San Francisco politics. But today I'm here to make a very, very important announcement. Yesterday, the Public Utilities Commission approved the contract for our city attorney, Dennis Herrera, to become the next director of this incredible department. And I'm so grateful to our city attorney for the work that he has done to lead this city for the past 20 years, an office of dedicated public servants who fight every single day to focus on the things that matter the most to the people of San Francisco. And with our city attorney moving on, we now have a vacancy, potentially soon. And as a result, we have to fill that vacancy. And I can't think of anyone better to serve as the next city attorney for the city and county of San Francisco than Assemblymember David Chiu. Well, some of you may ask, why David? Well, actually, probably none of you asked why David, because most of you believe that David Chiu should be the next city attorney, because many of you have reached out to me and expressed the interest in seeing someone like David become city attorney. Now, many of you may know him as a member of the Board of Supervisors and assembly member, but his extensive career, first getting his law degree from Harvard, working for the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, working as an attorney for the United States Senate, working for Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights for the District Attorney's Office. He has an extensive career in law, one even before he stepped foot in the world of politics. That's why when he served as the president of the Board of Supervisors, he was a consensus builder. He was someone who was dedicated and worked hard to tackle many of the issues that he now continues to tackle in Sacramento. Focusing on tenants' rights, focusing on employment rights, civil rights and discrimination. There is a number of things that David and I continue to work on time and time again because it centers around the best interest of the people of this city. We are here today at a location that David will talk about just a little bit, but it's just one example of the work he did as an attorney to fight for those who are immigrants to San Francisco to ensure that they have access to affordable housing just like anyone else, and his work with the API community and a number of other challenges that existed during this pandemic demonstrates his commitment to fairness. It demonstrates his commitment to San Francisco, and it's why I know he'll be an incredible city attorney. And before I bring up David to talk a little bit and answer questions, I first want to just say a few things about our city attorney. You know, we have been so fortunate in this city to have Dennis Herrera as our city attorney for the past 20 years. And before he took office with a pledge to the people of San Francisco that he would ensure integrity in public institutions. And time again, in every fight that the city attorney's office has taken on, he has done just that. Starting early in his career with PG&E and the fight to shut down the power plant, which was an environmental harm to the people of the Bayview Hunters Point community. The work that he did to ensure that same-sex couples can marry legally just like anyone else was historic and went all the way to the Supreme Court, where we have accomplished our goal, although there are still fights that need to be done to ensure true equality. His work, when we first discovered, sadly, some of the challenges that existed with a number of city departments here in San Francisco, he and our controller, Ben Rosenfield, investigated, dug deep, uncovered, and made recommendations of decisions that are currently now being implemented to restore public trust in those particular departments. His career is a long one, but one that has established him as the city's attorney, but more importantly, the person that we all rely on, the person that we all respect and trust when it comes to implementing policies and dealing with cases that are the right thing to do and that will continue to protect our city. This is why I'm so grateful to him, so grateful and honored that in the wake of the challenges of the Public Utilities Department, he is taking on this new role. And although I know he won't be very far away from the city attorney's office, I know that he's going to do some incredible work for the Public Utilities Commission, especially with everything we need to do to continue our fight for clean power and the challenges of distribution and running in our own power system here in San Francisco, our water, our sewage, our infrastructure, long-term planning, and also just making sure that the people who work in that department know that they have someone that they can count on to lead that department and to make good decisions on behalf of the city and county of San Francisco. So with that, I want to bring up City Attorney Dennis Herrera to say a few words before I introduce David Chiu.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I see in one of my last roles still as city attorney, when you get the pleasure of being elected official, you got your independence, you can correct the mayor. So she said potentially an opening. The opening's, I submitted my letter of resignation, you accepted it. Come 11:59 p.m. on October the 31st, Halloween, I will no longer be city attorney. And it's been an honor and privilege of my life to serve the people of San Francisco as their city attorney for nearly 20 years. I've accomplished all that I could ever hope for, and more as city attorney. And while now is the time for a new professional challenge for me, I'm thrilled to be able to leave this office in the hands of someone who is committed to the mission, the values, and integrity that have made the San Francisco City Attorney's Office so remarkable for so long, the nation's preeminent public law office. That person is David Chiu. I've known David for years. In fact, we ran against each other way back in 2011, and we stayed friends through it. He is someone of principle and integrity. He is committed to transparency and clean government, and he is independent, which is the most important thing you can do as San Francisco City Attorney. I just want to give you a few examples of his dedication to the people of San Francisco. One shows his focus on everyday issues here in the city. Nightlife, always been a big part of San Francisco. We all value our nightlife. Part of what makes San Francisco special. In 2011, there was a rise in incidents of nighttime fights and other problems in privately owned parking lots around clubs. And David and I worked together to support the entertainment industry through legislation that made it safer for patrons to frequent nightlife venues in San Francisco. That was David Chiu's leadership. Another example shows his commitment to clean government. I worked with David way back in 2013 on a large package of good government reforms that tightened rules and regulations and requirements for City Hall lobbyists, closed contracting loopholes, and expanded accountability and access. That was David Chiu's leadership. And finally, and most recently, David worked with us fighting for California consumers. Some of you, probably most of you, remember that cities throughout the state won public nuisance lawsuits against the lead paint industry. That was going to ensure that we saw remediation in thousands and thousands of lead paint units throughout the state of California. Well, the lead paint industry didn't like the judicially imposed remedy, and they went up to the legislature and tried to sneak through a bill that would have limited judicially imposed liability. David Chiu took the leadership, phoned me, worked closely with our office to make sure that California consumers were protected and that those judicial remedies stayed in place and that millions of Californians would benefit. David has demonstrated his commitment to independence and public integrity. And more than anything else, let me tell you, that's what you need to be a good city attorney. And he won't be doing it alone. I can tell you the professional integrity of the attorneys, the investigators, and the industry-leading staff in the city attorney's office is unquestionable. And they will continue to do their job for the people of San Francisco, and they will work tirelessly to ensure a smooth and seamless transition and make him the best city attorney that he can be on behalf of the city and county of San Francisco. And it is my honor and privilege to be turning over this office to somebody who will be a tremendous, tremendous steward of our traditions. Thanks very much.
Thank you again to our city attorney, Dennis Herrera, for your service. And thank you for your commitment to San Francisco. The city attorney's office here in this city is arguably the #1 city attorney's office anywhere in the country. And it is because of the leadership of our current city attorney. And I know there are big shoes to fill. And so in making a decision like this, it is not a decision that you take lightly. It's important to do what is in the best interest of the city. And ultimately, Assemblymember Chiu will be doing this job for the next couple of months until you, the people of San Francisco, make your decision. He is the people's attorney. He is the person who represents the city and county of San Francisco. And ultimately, you are the ones who decide. And I think that over the years, many of you have had a chance to get to know David Chiu. And hands down, he is one of the most gracious, hardworking, consensus-building, structured, relentless pursuit of justice person I know. I've worked with him for many, many years on so many issues, starting with the Board of Supervisors. And before I bring David Chiu up to say a few words, I remember when I was first elected to the Board of Supervisors. And one of the first supervisors who reached out to me was David Chiu. And we met, and he had a binder like this thick. But he said this wasn't it. There was other things that I needed to read before I started my job. And that is the reason why I supported him for president, because he wanted me to be prepared for what the job entailed, not when I got to the job, but before I stepped foot in that chamber. He wanted to make sure that I was ready to do the business of the people. And we went on to work on so many pieces of legislation together. And even when he left to go to Sacramento, he would still reach out to partner on important issues impacting the city. He is one of the hardest working legislators I know. And what's so interesting as an attorney, it's always from a lens, a legal lens, of trying to get to the point to really make sure that the policy is effective. And I think based on what our city attorney, Dennis Herrera, has already said about his work, his consistency, his involvement in important issues and protecting the public's best interests, regardless of who the fight is against, he will continue with that same drive, that same commitment, that same spirit of love for the people of San Francisco. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you the next city attorney for the city and county of San Francisco, David Chiu. Congratulations.
Good morning. I am so humbled and grateful for this appointment. And let me start first by thanking Mayor Breed, not just for this opportunity to serve, but for her tremendous leadership during these incredibly difficult times. And I'm looking forward to working with her and alongside with her, with every single member of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors, with 100 city departments and commissions to move our city forward. I, of course, want to salute my friend, our current city attorney, Dennis Herrera. For the past 20 years, he has established the gold standard for public law offices in this country. I think it would take us an hour to summarize his accomplishments, but let me just say in short, our city owes Dennis Herrera an incredible debt of gratitude. And I am looking forward to working closely with him during this transition and with him in his new role. I also want to take a moment of personal privilege and thank my dear wife, Candace. In addition to her public interest job, she has, for the past 7 years, held down the home fort while I have been in Sacramento, looking over our very rambunctious 5-year-old son. And I am looking forward to being home with family. Speaking of family, I am the son of Chinese immigrant parents who are watching as we speak on Facebook Live. Hi, Mom and Dad. Growing up in Boston, none of us ever expected that I would become an attorney because my family, none of us had ever met an attorney, had ever known an attorney. But something happened my college freshman year. I got a call from a friend about a hate crime involving 8 Asian students at a nearby school who were on their way to a formal dance, who were attacked by football players who hurled racial epithets. And the most incredible thing about that experience is those football players were never disciplined. That moment, among others, changed my life. I became a student activist. I studied the civil rights movement. I switched my major from biochemistry to government. And I decided to go to law school because I wanted to fight for justice. The fight for justice is why I became a public interest attorney, why I clerked for the Ninth Circuit, why I served as a criminal prosecutor, as Democratic counsel to the Senate Constitution Subcommittee, why I then became a civil rights attorney. The fight for justice is why I moved to San Francisco, because in our city, we stand up for those who are more vulnerable than we are. We right wrongs. I first came to San Francisco to work for the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights as we were challenging Proposition 187, an anti-immigrant initiative that would have kicked immigrant kids out of schools and hospitals. A couple years later, I represented a number of affordable housing organizations, including Mission Housing. I want to thank Sam Moss and your leadership, because at that time, there were rules in place by Governor Pete Wilson to kick immigrant tenants out of their homes. Immigrants like my parents, homes like the ones behind us. Well, for those 2 lawsuits, we prevailed. Justice prevailed. For the last 13 years, I've been so honored to serve as a local, then as a state lawmaker for San Francisco. And during that entire time, the fight for justice has been front and center. I've been fighting for our collective civil rights, authoring laws not just to expand the right to housing and the rights of immigrants, but the rights of our LGBTQ community, the rights of women, the right to choose. And as your next city attorney, I look forward to furthering that right for our collective civil rights. Because in the wake of Me Too, Black Lives Matter, anti-Asian hate, we have to ensure that everyone from our community feels welcome and has a place here. As a lawmaker, I've taken on some of the most entrenched corporate interests in America: big pharma and big oil, gun manufacturers and lead paint companies, Wall Street banks and predatory for-profit schools. And as city attorney, I'm going to fight to make sure that we are protecting workers, we are standing up for consumers, and we are going to hold corporations accountable if they cross the line. And as a policymaker, working with our good mayor, our supervisors, our city attorney, I've worked hard to address the pressing issues of the day, whether it be getting folks to work after the Great Recession or making sure that tenants are housed during this pandemic. And as your next city attorney, I am going to work with all these policymakers to look for ways and opportunities to use the law to address the pressing problems of the day: homelessness, public safety on our streets, the existential crisis of climate, ensuring that city government is held to the highest ethical standards. Let me just close by one observation about what is happening in our country at this moment. We are living in dark days. There are rights that we have taken for granted that are literally in danger. The right to health care, the right to choose, the right to vote. But the San Francisco City Attorney's Office has often stood up during dark days, when no one thought marriage equality was possible, when Donald Trump targeted our sanctuary city, when Mayor Breed needed legal advice in how to defend San Francisco from a new virus called COVID-19. And the incredible professionals at the San Francisco City Attorney's Office have wielded legal swords and legal shields for our city and our state, time after time after time. And I'm looking forward to standing alongside each of them, to standing alongside the office and standing up for San Francisco and fighting for justice. Thank you.
And to talk a little bit about Assemblymember Chiu's work, I wanted to bring up Sam Moss, who is the director of Mission Housing Development Corporation, but Mission Housing. Sam?
Thank you, Mayor Breed. To say it's an honor to be up here is it's really putting it lightly. I never thought 10 years ago when I first started at Mission Housing that we'd be here today, but it is a true honor to be up here and help David move on to the next part of his career, but more importantly to usher in such a great person to the city of San Francisco. There are few people in the affordable housing industry's experience that have fought as hard for low-income tenants than David Chiu. And I don't just mean, fighting hard with a tweet here and there. David really, he writes the legislation, he calls you up, he wants to know what you think. And it is rare that a politician truly believes in what they're doing, that doesn't just want to write legislation for legislation's sake. Because David really hits the ground running, and he understands. Mission Housing would not be where it is today without the hard work and support of David Chiu, both as a city supervisor, as the president of the Board of Supervisors, as well as an assembly person up in Sacramento. And I think it's very fitting that we have this event here today at Juan Pafare Plaza. Juan Pafare was a champion of the immigrant community, and to have this press conference here just I think really brings it all back home. So I want to thank everyone for coming and just say again what an honor it is to be here. Congrats.
All right, there it is. The worst kept secret in San Francisco is finally out. With that, are there any questions?
City Attorney Herrera, your office has spent the last year and a half investigating a pretty wide-ranging corruption scandal. Where does that investigation currently stand, and how will you sort of pass it on to your predecessor?
Well, let me just say, first of all, you are correct that we've been working diligently over the course of the last year and a half, both the Controller's Office and other law enforcement agencies, to make sure that our departments live up to the highest ethical standards. And we have, over the course of that time, rolled out numerous recommendations, actions, which demonstrate how seriously our office and the Controller's Office take our investigation. While I will not comment on the specifics of any investigation, as I've said all along, our investigations continue, and irrespective of whether I'm in that office or not, they will continue, because these type of investigations are made up not necessarily of the folks at the top. We have some of the most dedicated legal professionals anywhere, veterans of U.S. attorneys' offices and other agencies that are committed to this work and will guide and advise Assemblymember Chiu as the investigations continue, and they will continue. And they'll go where they are, and the next city attorney will make his decisions and his recommendations and any actions he chooses to bring. And he'll continue to advise Mayor Breed about the best way to ensure that we're living up to the truest and highest ethical ideals. So that work has not slowed down at all. It will not slow down, and it will continue.
Thank you. And I'll just add that some of the investigation that the city attorney and controller's office has done for various city agencies have led to a number of recommendations, which I immediately, through an executive directive, implemented, especially for certain departments like the Department of Building Inspection and Department of Public Works. So I will continue to do what is necessary to get our city on track and to restore public trust after a very challenging time for our city. And this is why, in making decisions about who is running these various agencies that were, of course, of concern from the public, that's why it's so important to have people like our city attorney at the helm of the Public Utilities Commission, as well as other agencies, in making those decisions. You can be assured that these public servants like David Chiu and like Dennis Herrera have their own established reputations and will be extraordinary leaders in helping to make the right decision in these various conditions. All right. No more questions? Easy crowd, huh? All right. Thank you, everyone.